Welcome to this retelling of one of the most disturbing cases ever recorded in American history. Before we begin, take a moment to comment where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this story. We're curious to see how far these true accounts travel and when people hear them, day or night. In the fall of 1843, the valleys and ridges of northern Alabama still hid secrets unknown to white settlers. The rough lands of the Cumberland Plateau, with its thick forests and deep ravines, became both a shelter and a prison for one man whose name would soon be whispered with both fear and awe. This is the story of Samuel Greene, a man who escaped slavery only to become something far more frightening than his former owners could have ever imagined. The first written record of Samuel Greene appears in the Johnson Plantation archives, about 20 miles northeast of Huntsville in the Tennessee Valley District. William Johnson, a wealthy landowner who had moved from Georgia to Alabama during the 1820s, owned more than 40 enslaved people. Among them was a young man listed simply as Sam, age 22, field hand. According to the plantation ledgers, which are now kept by the Madison County Historical Society, Sam was described as troublesome and had tried to escape twice before turning 23. The Johnson plantation sat beneath the southern ridges of the Cumberland Plateau, where the ground rose steeply from the fertile valley. The mountains to the east stood like guards, their wooded slopes offering both danger and hope. For anyone thinking about running from slavery, those mountains were perhaps the only real path to freedom. To the north lay Tennessee, with its own system of plantations. To the west ran the wide and dangerous Tennessee River, and to the south stretched Alabama's plantation heartland. On the cold, stormy night of October 11, 1843, Sam Greene vanished from the Johnson plantation for the third and final time. This time, his escape had been carefully prepared. The Overseer's Journal, still preserved today in the Alabama Department of Archives, recorded that Greene had taken a wool blanket, a hog butchering knife, and around 2 weeks of dried food from the smokehouse. What made this escape remarkable wasn't just that he got away, but that he didn't head north toward the free states like most fugitives. Instead, evidence suggests he went deeper into the wild mountains of northeastern Alabama, into the kind of country few white settlers dared to enter. The first sign of his transformation came 3 months later, in January 1844, when a hunter named Elijah Thornton told the sheriff of Jackson County he had seen a wild-looking black man while tracking deer near what is now Guntersville Lake. According to Thornton's report, preserved in county records, the man wore animal skins and carried a crude spear and knife. When Thornton tried to get closer, the man disappeared into the forest. Over the following months, similar reports began to reach the local authorities, from trappers, hunters, and the few settlers who lived in the remote valleys. The mysterious figure was always described the same way: a tall black man with a scar on his left cheek, dressed in hides and skilled in the ways of the wilderness. At first, these sightings were treated as odd stories, but things soon took a darker turn. In April 1844, a small hunting group led by Thomas Wilkes went missing near present-day Scottsboro. When a search team found their camp, it was torn apart and 3 of the 4 men were gone. The only survivor, James Carter, was discovered hiding in a hollow tree, terrified and half-mad. He told the county magistrate that they had been attacked by a Negro mountain devil who moved like a shadow and killed his companions silently and swiftly. Officials dismissed his account as madness until other strange incidents followed. Through the summer and fall of 1844, isolated cabins and farms began reporting thefts. Strangely, the stolen items were never jewelry or money, but tools, weapons, food, and clothes. People began to whisper that the thief moved through their homes while they slept, taking what he needed without waking anyone. By December, the name Mountain Devil had taken hold among locals. Some believed he was no longer just a man. but something supernatural, a being who could move without sound, live in the freezing woods, and who especially hated white hunters and slave catchers. The Huntsville Democrat newspaper mocked these stories as superstition, but admitted that a fugitive seemed to be living wild in the highlands northeast of the city. The tale might have remained only a local legend if not for what happened on February 18, 1845. Jeremiah Burke, a well-known slave hunter who had built his career catching fugitives across the South, organized a group of 6 men and 4 dogs to hunt Samuel Green. Several plantation owners paid him to do it, fearing that Green's freedom might inspire others to run away. According to the only survivor, Michael Reynolds, they tracked Green's trail deep into a narrow valley. As night fell, they camped near a stream. Around midnight, the dogs began to growl, and then went silent. Moments later, shapes moved between the trees, and the hunters were killed one by one, dragged into the darkness without a sound. Reynolds escaped only by tumbling into the creek and being carried downstream. He later said that as he clung to a fallen tree, he saw a tall figure standing on the bank watching him. "He could have shot me," Reynolds said, "but instead he let me live, as if to tell the story." The deaths of 5 white men, especially men employed in the legal capture of slaves, could not be ignored. In March 1845, Governor Benjamin Fitzpatrick ordered a militia force of 40 men under Captain William Hull to hunt down Samuel Green. For 3 weeks, they searched the mountains, finding only abandoned camps, fresh ashes, and hidden supplies in caves. Occasionally, they caught sight of a distant figure who vanished before they could reach him. On the 18th day, they discovered what they believed was Green's main camp. Built partly into a cliff, it was half cabin, half cave, roofed with thatch and strong wooden walls. Inside, they found an alarming stockpile of weapons, rifles, knives, spears, and bows. Even worse were the personal belongings of at least 7 missing men. But the most shocking find was a journal, apparently written by Samuel Green himself. The journal, bound in animal hide, showed that he was not only literate but deeply intelligent and filled with rage. He wrote about his life on the Johnson plantation, the cruelty, the punishment, and his earlier escape attempts. In one haunting line he wrote, "In these mountains I have become what they feared, no longer a slave, but a demon of their own making." The journal also hinted that he was not alone. He had 2 companions, other fugitives he called brothers in bondage. Together they learned to survive by hunting, gathering, and taking what they needed. The militia searched another week but never found Green or his allies. When they finally returned to Huntsville, they carried the journal but not the man himself. After that, reports of the mountain devil quieted for a time. Some thought he had escaped north. Others believed he died in the wild, but peace didn't last. On January 7, 1846, William Johnson, Samuel Green's former master, was found dead in his locked study. Nothing was stolen. A handmade arrow was lodged in his heart. On his desk lay a folded note that read, "Justice comes even to the mighty. Remember Samuel Green." The killing of a rich plantation owner sent shockwaves through the South. A larger expedition, over 60 armed men, was organized to end the threat once and for all. They set out on January 20, 1846, determined not to bring Green back alive. 2 weeks later, they returned with 17 men dead. Survivors said Green and his companions led them into traps, struck at night, and vanished again. One group awoke to find 2 men missing and a message carved into a tree. "You hunt a man who learned to hunt from watching you." Major Thomas Bradford, who led the mission, finally ordered a retreat. In his report, he wrote, "We face not a man but a phantom. My men fear the trees, the dark, the silence." For more than a year afterward, Samuel Green's legend grew. Though attacks became rare, people claimed to see warnings carved into trees. Slave catchers refused to enter the mountains. Cherokee locals spoke of a spirit of vengeance protecting the enslaved. And during this time, more enslaved people escaped from northern Alabama plantations than ever before, perhaps guided by the ghostly figure who had once been a man. While there is no direct proof connecting Samuel Green to these escapes, stories passed down through the families of formerly enslaved people in the area suggest that Green and his companions ran a simple but effective network, helping fugitives cross the mountains and avoid capture. The final confirmed sighting of Samuel Green took place in August 1847. A surveying team working near the Alabama-Georgia border met a man who fit Green's description. According to their account, he approached them calmly and without weapons. The leader of the group, Edward Mitchell, later wrote that the man introduced himself as Samuel Green and spoke with them openly for nearly an hour. Mitchell described Green as weathered from his time in the wild, but still strong and self-assured. He noted that Green spoke clearly, with the confidence of a free man rather than the fear of someone being hunted. Most memorably, Green reportedly told the men that he was planning to leave Alabama. "I have made these mountains remember me," Mitchell quoted him as saying. "Now I go to find what freedom truly means." Whether Green actually escaped north as he claimed remains uncertain. No other confirmed reports or records mention him after 1847. Still, his legend endured. During the 1850s, plantation owners across northern Alabama said their enslaved workers whispered tales about a mountain spirit, a man who lived free in the wilderness and punished those who mistreated others. During the Civil War, when Union troops entered parts of northern Alabama, several officers wrote in their journals about hearing locals speak of a black phantom of the mountains who had haunted the region years earlier. One officer, Captain James Woodson, wrote in 1864 that he met an elderly Cherokee man who said he had given Green shelter in his final days before leaving the area. According to the story, Green did indeed travel north and eventually reached Canada. The historical record offers no clear ending to Samuel Green's story. Like many figures who exist between fact and folklore, the truth has faded over time. What remains certain is that for almost 4 years, an escaped enslaved man survived in one of the harshest wilderness regions in the American South and turned himself from hunted into hunter, from property into legend. The mountains of northern Alabama still stand, now covered with roads and small towns. Few people passing through this quiet landscape today know the story of the man who once made these peaks his home and stronghold. Yet in the small communities that have existed here for generations, especially among descendants of enslaved people, the memory of Samuel Green, the slave who escaped and became the most feared mountain man of the South, still lives. He remains a powerful symbol of resistance, endurance, and the steep price of freedom in a land built on slavery. The final entry in Samuel Green's journal perhaps describes his transformation best. "They made me property, but these mountains made me a man. They made me invisible, but here I learned to see in darkness. They tried to break my spirit, but instead forged something they could never control. I am what they created, turned back upon its creators. Let history remember this truth." And history, however imperfectly, has remembered. In the 1930s, the Federal Writers Project collected accounts from elderly people who had been enslaved in northern Alabama. Several of them mentioned Samuel Green, though they called him by different names: the Shadow Man, Mountain Samuel, or the Free One. These stories suggest that Green's influence reached far beyond fear. For many enslaved people, he represented more than escape. He stood for defiance and even justice. Martha Johnson, interviewed in 1937 at age 91, recalled hearing her mother's stories about him. "Mama used to whisper to us children that if the master was cruel, the mountain man would know, and he'd come down from his hiding place to set things right. We weren't supposed to talk about him, but everyone knew. When masters or overseers were found dead or disappeared, the slaves would look at each other knowingly. Nobody mourned those men. The effect of Greene's existence, or even the belief in him, on slavery in northern Alabama was huge. Plantation records from 1844 to 1848 show that punishments were unusually restrained in areas near the mountains. One plantation owner warned his brother in Georgia, "We must tread carefully with discipline, for there is a devil in these hills who has appointed himself judge and executioner of those he deems too harsh." Even slave patrols shared this fear. Thomas Weatherby, who rode with a patrol in Jackson County, wrote in his memoir published after his death in 1879, "No man wished to ride too near the highlands after dark. We had heard what happened to Burke's party. Some said it was Indians or a panther, but we knew better. There was a man in those mountains who had declared war on anyone who hunted his kind, and he fought that war with terrible efficiency." The winter of 1847 was especially severe in northern Alabama. Freezing temperatures lasted for weeks, and snow blanketed the mountain peaks. For someone living alone in the wilderness, even one as skilled as Greene, survival would have been extremely difficult. Many believed that this was the season he finally left the region. A letter discovered in the 1890s and now preserved by the Alabama Department of Archives and History offers a possible clue about his fate. Dated May 1848, it was written by a Quaker abolitionist in Pennsylvania to a friend in Ohio. The letter mentioned, "A remarkable man recently arrived from the southern wilderness who identified himself as Samuel and claimed to have lived as a wild man in the mountains of Alabama after escaping slavery." The letter described him as marked by both physical and emotional scars from slavery and years of solitude, yet also as a man of great intelligence and dignity. The writer noted that Samuel planned to continue to Canada, fearing that even in a free state, the newly passed Fugitive Slave Act could lead to his capture. If the letter truly refers to Samuel Greene, it offers a rare look at his later life. The writer said Samuel spoke of having found a kind of justice during his time in the wilderness, but now sought peace among people who would recognize his humanity. He also carried a small leather journal in which he wrote with surprising skill. No other trace of Greene's later life has ever been found. If he did reach Canada, he likely changed his name and began again, as many fugitives did. The trail ends here, leaving his final years a mystery. Even so, the impact of Greene's 4 years as the Mountain Devil echoed long after. Throughout the 1850s, as tensions over slavery grew and the nation edged toward war, northern Alabama's mountain regions remained a dangerous place for slave catchers. Whether because of Greene's lasting influence, other fugitives following his example, or simply the fear his legend inspired, enforcing slavery there became far more difficult. His story was passed quietly from plantation to plantation, a tale of a man who not only escaped, but fought back. Unlike well-known figures such as Frederick Douglass, who used words and writing to challenge slavery, Samuel Greene represented a different kind of rebellion, silent, fierce, and relentless. During the Civil War, when Union armies entered northern Alabama, officers reported something curious. Many enslaved people fled not toward Union lines, but into the mountains. Colonel James Montgomery, whose regiment included former slaves, wrote, "The local Negroes hold a curious belief that safety lies not with us, but in the high country to the east, where they claim some champion of their race once made his kingdom." The belief was so strong that soldiers had to send guides into the hills to lead these fugitives to safety. Sergeant William Jackson, one of those guides and formerly enslaved himself, reported, "They speak of a man named Greene, as if he were still there watching over those mountains. I tried to tell them he's long gone if he ever existed at all. But the belief runs deep. After the war, as the South entered the uncertain years of Reconstruction, the story of the Mountain Devil changed meaning. To newly freed black people, Greene became a symbol of strength and self-rule. To white Southerners who had lost power, he embodied their fears of revenge. One Freedmen's Bureau report from 1871 told of a dispute between a white landowner and his black tenants. When the man threatened violence, an elderly tenant calmly said, "These mountains still have eyes just as they did in Greene's time." The landowner reportedly turned pale and backed down. Historian Claudia Mitchell-Therrell, who has deeply studied local folklore, notes that by the late 1800s, the legend had split into two versions. Among white storytellers, Greene became a dark spirit who attacked without reason. Among black families, he was a righteous avenger who punished cruelty and helped others escape. These different tellings reveal how complex his legacy had become. The real Samuel Greene, as much as we can know him, was neither saint nor monster, but a man shaped by slavery's brutality and the unforgiving wilderness that gave him freedom. Archaeological digs in the 1990s added another layer to his story. Researchers from the University of Alabama found a small cabin built beneath a rock shelter on the Cumberland Plateau. Charcoal remains dated it to the mid-19th century, and tools and weapons discovered there matched the time period. Most strikingly, a single metal button was identical to those used on uniforms from the Johnson plantation during the 1840s. Though it can't be proven that the cabin belonged to Greene, its location and age strongly fit the accounts of his hideouts. Dr. Margaret Wilkinson, who led the study, wrote that the construction showed remarkable adaptability and skill in surviving off the land. The shelter overlooked one of the few paths into the high country, perhaps chosen by someone who needed to see danger coming long before it arrived. By the early years of the 20th century, the story of Samuel Greene had begun to fade from general memory, surviving mainly through family stories and a few local records. The rise of industry in northern Alabama, especially near Birmingham, brought in new people who had little connection to the old antebellum past. The mountains that had once been Greene's refuge were now covered with mines, logging paths, and later paved roads. Still, in some small communities, especially those founded by formerly enslaved people, Greene's name was not forgotten. Records from a small African Methodist Episcopal church near Scottsboro mention annual gatherings on January 7th, known simply as Remembrance Day, marking the death of William Johnson. Older church members interviewed during the 1970s said these gatherings were held to remember the day when justice reached a cruel master, a clear reference to Greene's most famous act of revenge. As the 20th century progressed and the civil rights movement brought renewed focus to the country's long history of racial violence and resistance, historians began to look again at figures like Greene, whose stories had largely been left out of formal accounts. While the written evidence was limited, the shared oral traditions across several communities gave credibility to the core of the story. An enslaved man had indeed escaped into the Alabama mountains and become a symbol of both fear and hope. Dr. Benjamin Turner, a historian from Howard University and an expert on the Underground Railroad, placed Greene among what he called wilderness maroons, runaways who, instead of heading north, built secret lives within the South. Turner noted that even though Greene seemed to live mostly alone or with only a few others, his way of surviving mirrored the strategies of larger maroon groups found in the Great Dismal Swamp of Virginia and North Carolina, or the Louisiana bayous. These people were not just runaways. They created their own free worlds deep within lands of bondage. A curious detail connected to Greene's legend surfaced in 1969 when an elderly woman named Sarah Jenkins, then 97, gave an interview for a student researching her family's past. Jenkins claimed that her grandfather had been a companion to the Mountain Man of Alabama. According to her, her grandfather William had fled a plantation in Georgia around 1845 and eventually met Samuel Greene in the highlands. Grandpa said Samuel taught him how to live off the land, Jenkins recalled, how to move quietly, find food, and make weapons from what the forest gave them. They lived together for nearly 2 years, until Green decided to go north. William stayed until the war ended, then came down from the mountains and started a new life. If Jenkins's memories were true, they offered a rare glimpse into the community aspect of Green's wilderness years. They hinted that Green was not always a lone wanderer, but someone who may have helped and trained other fugitives. This fits with Green's own writings about brothers in bondage and supports the idea that he played a part in helping others find freedom. Still, the full truth about Samuel Green's life and his final fate remains uncertain. Like many enslaved people, his life went mostly unrecorded until his actions forced their way into history. Even then, most accounts were written by those who feared or pursued him, not by Green himself. His recovered journal gives us the closest thing to his own words, though it tells only part of the story. What is known is that for a short but extraordinary time, Samuel Green managed something nearly unthinkable for his era. He turned the power structure upside down. In a society built on white control over black lives, he carved out a place where that power could not reach, and where those who tried often paid dearly. The mountains became his kingdom, a place where he was not owned but free. As the 20th century moved into the 21st, interest in Green's story returned. A regional museum in Scottsboro created a small exhibit about the Mountain Devil, showing maps of his suspected territory and relics from the time. In 2009, a historical marker was put up near what is believed to have been one of his camps. The plaque cautiously calls the story a local legend, but it marked official recognition nonetheless. In more recent years, descendants of enslaved families from northern Alabama have worked to gather and preserve stories about Green. At a 2017 family reunion in the region, people shared oral histories and discussed their ancestral ties to his legend. One organizer, James Washington, said, "Samuel Green is part of our heritage of resistance. Whether every story about him is true or not, what matters is what he stands for: the refusal to accept bondage, the will to be free, and the courage to fight when needed." The mountains themselves have changed drastically since Green's time. Forests that once stretched unbroken are now dotted with vacation cabins and parks. Trails that were once known only to hunters and wild animals are now mapped and walked by thousands every year. Yet in the deep, untouched valleys of the Cumberland Plateau, it is still possible to imagine the world Green knew: the isolation, the danger, and the sense of freedom. Park Ranger Deborah Coleman, who has worked in those forests for over 20 years, said that some visitors come only because of Green's legend. They want to walk where he walked, she said. Some come because they see him as a hero. Others say they can still feel his presence here. Coleman herself doubts the ghost stories, but admits that when you're deep in these woods and the sun goes down, it's easy to believe a man could move through here like a ghost. Even today, with GPS and marked trails, people sometimes get lost. In Green's time, those same mountains would have been the perfect hiding place for a man determined to stay free. Recently, historians studying Black survivalism, the ways African Americans learned to survive in hostile environments, have revisited Green's case. Dr. Monica Richardson, who specializes in this field, wrote that Green didn't just survive. He mastered his surroundings so fully that he turned from hunted to hunter. She said his intelligence and adaptability directly challenged the racist beliefs used to justify slavery. Dr. Terrence Watson, a historian of slave resistance, sees Green's greatest success not only in his physical survival, but in the fear he inspired among slaveholders and patrols. Green attacked the core idea of slavery, Watson wrote, that white power was total and unquestionable. Every patrol that feared the mountains, every overseer who thought twice before abusing someone, was a small victory against the system. In northern Alabama today, people remain divided over the legend. Many white residents see it as exaggerated folklore, while many black residents regard it as a proud story of defiance. Some local businesses even use the legend as a tourism hook, offering mountain devil hiking tours through Green's supposed territory, an irony that Samuel himself might have found amusing. Like many who lived at the edge of written history, the gaps in evidence have allowed Samuel Green to become different things to different people. Villain or hero, murderer or freedom fighter, warning or inspiration. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between, as suggested by the words said to be his in his last encounter with surveyor Edward Mitchell. "I became what necessity demanded. Judge me not unless you have worn the chains I broke." In the end, Samuel Green's legacy forces a deeper question about resistance under oppression. In a world where enslaved people had no lawful protection and every system worked to keep them subjugated, what forms of resistance were possible and which were just? Green chose the path of open rebellion, often violent, driven by the unique conditions of his life and the freedom offered by the wilderness around him. American history often celebrates those who fled north and worked within moral boundaries familiar to the larger society. Heroes like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth. But Green represents another side of that struggle, the maroon, the outlaw, the one who not only refused slavery, but rejected the rules set by his oppressors altogether. It seems fitting that his final fate remains uncertain. Some believe he reached Canada and lived in quiet freedom. Others say he died during the harsh winter of 1847. Still others claim he never left the mountains, that he grew old in the valleys he once ruled. This uncertainty keeps his story alive, open-ended, like America's ongoing struggle to face its own past. Samuel Green, the man who escaped slavery and became the South's most feared mountain rebel, stands between history and legend. Enough records exist to confirm he was real, but not enough to define him fully. His life reminds us that the history of slavery and resistance still holds untold stories, unheard voices, and hidden acts of defiance. The mountains of northern Alabama remain silent witnesses, their forests and cliffs keeping the memory of a man who turned captivity into freedom and wilderness into power. Those who stand on those high ridges today, gazing across the misty valleys, might wonder, what other secrets do these mountains keep? What other names, acts of courage, and moments of defiance lie buried in their shadows? And what would Samuel Green think of the world his rebellion helped shape? In the final words attributed to his journal, he wrote, "I came to these mountains a fugitive, running from what they said I must be. I leave them a man who knows what he truly is. Whatever waits beyond these ridges, I carry this truth inside me, strong as the mountains themselves. I was born a slave, but I will die free, in body and in spirit."